Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me, the Kings Pulse podcast, Brenden Nunes. Brenden, what's going on?
I'm doing great, especially after that. I'm feeling on top of the world, and I can't wait to hear the mild-mannered intro that Sean gets.
Yeah, Fox 40's Sean Cunningham is also joining us. Sean,
Okay,
how are you?
All right. I'm tremendous. I'm so glad you didn't hurt your throat because that does sound like it hurts. I'm tremendous. I'm back home after 49ers camp, a few days there, and yeah, I've got great Wi-Fi, hopefully. Fingers crossed. I sound a lot better than sitting in the car outside of Levi's Stadium, so yeah, let's make this happen.
Yeah, we had one comment that like doing live hits or people in weird places is going to be bad for the show. Like, it's reality. Either you want the Kings Beat podcast to go on, or we have to skip shows because people have things to do. Like Sean had to go cover the 49ers training camp. So I understand the beef. At the same time, if you haven't listened to radio in your life, like half the time they do hits with people, they're in their car and you can hear road noise in the background. We're in an era where, news shows have people on and their kids show up in the middle of it. We're in a different era. I don't think it's going to hurt us to have a show here or there where either we're all live together or, heaven forbid, one of us is on location somewhere and we've got to record from there. So sorry if it bugs you, but,
Sorry.
That's the reality of doing podcasting and everything else. Let's get to the business stuff. Brendan seems like he wants to say something, but we'll get to business stuff.
Yeah, do it, man. Go,
yeah.
Brendan.
Go, Brendan. What do you got?
I'm good. What do you mean?
I thought he was going to unleash.
No,
I was ready for
I was going to talk about my River Cats experience a little bit, but let's do the business stuff.
Okay, yeah. If you're watching right now on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and subscribe. We broke 2,000 subscribers. Now we're hunting 3,000 subscribers, and that's just kind of the nature of the business. Also, the Kings Beat. Make sure you're joining the Kings Beat. We will have another Off the Record with the Kings Beat happy hour coming up, I think, relatively soon. Probably next week, maybe the week after, but probably next week. And I'm going to try to have a really, really cool guest that I've been working on for a while. If you missed last month's, Deuce Mason was incredible. I thought it was a great conversation, really good look behind the scenes on his path to where he is right now in the media world, which is pretty amazing for a kid who fought through a lot of adversity young. So outside of that, let's get to this. Brendan, what do you got? You went to a River Cats game. Sean and I discussed this a little bit. There's some issues with the River Cats stadium that I've always disliked, and I guess we'll start with that. Did you see a fan get hit with a foul ball? Because that's typically what happens at the River Cats game.
I did go 2 days in a row, actually. One was a 6:30 start time. The other was like 12:05, something like that. Second day, people were pretty close. Very, very close. And, yeah, I can only imagine witnessing the lady that was 2 seats away from getting her head just, that ball landing on her would not have been a good look. So there were people that were very close, and I think I heard you on the episode say that the ricochet is what you really have to watch for, and I definitely witnessed that and experienced that a little bit. So I did see that a bit. I thought that the field was really nice, specifically just like the view in the background. I was a little surprised at like just how gorgeous I thought it was, like seeing the Tower Bridge and some of the other buildings that you can see from the field. I thought was really cool, and I'm not a big baseball guy. Friend Franklin Cardicelli tries to get me to be a baseball guy all the time, but I don't know that that's quite going to happen. I don't know that I loved the baseball I watched, but I liked the atmosphere, and it's a good time being there. I'm trying to check all the boxes and slowly become a Sacramentian. What is the word here?
Sacramentan.
Yeah, I might have to check off.
That was your first time there?
First time there. And I was thinking maybe first Sac Republic game is this weekend, but we'll see. Trying to check off some of these things.
Got a nice lid there too. How about that?
Yeah,
Look at that.
yeah. This Orlando Magic knockoff hat. I mean,
Oh, come on. That's not true.
Yeah, I haven't been.
I wore my shirt here. I don't know when the Giants became
Oh, got it.
Cats affiliates. The date was March 30th, 2016.
Yeah, that's the day I burned anything related to the River Cats and just threw it in a big pile and did the LeBron James leaving Cleveland act and burned it to the ground. I also I celebrated because I've talked about this on D-Lo and Casey that hopefully this thing keeps going. We've been having Wi-Fi issues today, so people know, but I think that one was just that everyone muted at the same time. Yeah, I talked about this on D-Lo and Casey that if the Oakland A's do relocate to Las Vegas, that I only have two choices. Either I become a non-baseball fan, which would be really hard because it was always my first love, or I switch teams. And so me and my son had already chosen which team we will switch to, which we had chosen maybe like 6 months ago because one of my son's best friends goes to San Diego State. So we decided we would be Padres fans. So when he goes down and visit him, we can be Padres fan. And then the Padres just absolutely crushed the trade deadline. And the Giants absolutely were crushed by the trade deadline. And so anyway, yeah, that was enjoyable for me. Just so you know, Sean, it was enjoyable. Yeah. So Padres fans, here we come. It's, a little Bob Melvin. Happy to follow Bob Melvin to the Padres. And if we do in fact leave, the only time we will leave our fanship of the Oakland A's is if they're no longer the Oakland A's.
And you made that proclamation before they got Josh Hader and Juan Soto in this huge trade
long before
deal.
Yeah,
you did it, man. I remember. I mean, I can attest to it. You did it on this podcast, and as long as I said, I'm glad you're not not going to the Dodger fan. I mean, that would just absolutely crush me. I would probably put hands on you if you would become a Dodger fan.
Sean would throw down if I became a Dodgers fan. You know what?
And it's not like I could beat anyone up. It would be literally blind rage. Like it was just all it would be.
I'd be slapped a bunch, I think. It'd be like one of these things.
Yeah, it's going to be really awful.
It would not be the Jason Jones losing his mind in the media room act. Yeah, I think it would be different.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You don't know what I'm talking about. Sean and I, we had to hold Jason Jones back one night. It was and that dude's strong. He's strong as an ox. So let's get to, before we get into Kings chatter, I just, these things always work in threes. And I know the last pod we talked about the great Bill Russell and I think it's Nichelle Nichols, who is Lieutenant Uhura on Star Trek, all passing away on Sunday. And then the baseball world really, and actually the sports world in general, just had a tremendous blow when Vin Scully passed away the other night. Being raised here in this area, some of the most defining moments in my sports fandom were Vin Scully. I'm a little too young to remember the home run call, to see it live, the Hank Aaron home run call from Vin Scully, but certainly the catch, which you guys see behind me. I have the Letters to 87 book from my friend Matt Mayako, but also the Kurt Gibson home run call. I don't even want to pull a lawnmower cord because of Kurt Gibson and his act rounding second base. Certainly hearing Vin Scully call that epic, home run off of Dennis Eckersley. But just a sad day for sports in general, because that was a great dude and a great voice and a great ambassador for the game of baseball.
Yeah, can't disagree at all. I mean, what a legend. I've always separated, my hatred of the Dodgers from Vin Scully, and you mentioned some of those great moments there too, James, and to think that it went from different sports, and even from him calling Barry Bonds home run as well. I mean, the record breaking home run for him, pretty incredible stuff, that's for sure. And then just the outpouring of not only support but just admiration of the guy and people who adored him. I was not to personalize anything, but I didn't know him at all. I'd been around him a couple times. Never even really had much of a conversation because every time I was around him, people would just swarm the guy. We're not talking fans, man. We're talking like media. Like other media would just absolutely swarm the guy. I remember, especially since LA, you can remember like Vin Scully and Chick Hearn, and I remember NBA. I'd have moments with Chick Hearn where we could talk, and he didn't kind of, Chick was a legend, but in comparison to Vin Scully, I've never seen another radio, television analyst, broadcaster, whatever, swarmed the way people did around Vin Scully. And you think about baseball, man, like those are long days. So you get there so early before the game. You're there until maybe an hour. Well, they get out of there pretty quickly afterwards. But those are just long days. And you would think that there'd be a lot of moments to access the guy or pull him aside, have a chat, whatever, a downtime, if you will. And at least when he was on the road, I never saw him at Dodger Stadium. I never went down there during his run. And but anytime he came up to San Francisco or Oakland, like the guy was just absolutely hounded. You would have thought the president was in town.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm as the baby of the show, not the most familiar with Vin Scully, but obviously know the person, and it's just amazing to me to see the impact that he can have, that someone can have on just people in general, that it's not just players that have this crazy impact on people around the world, that it's broadcasters and so many different other people, and clearly Vin Scully was one of those guys. So it's just amazing to me to see the sort of impact that someone in that role is able to have.
Yeah, and I think we're surrounded with legends here in Sacramento that are Sacramento legends. The Jerry Reynolds and Gary Geralds of the world who have put their stamp on the local scene. And he was Vin Scully was lucky enough to not just be the Dodgers guy, but he was also, a national broadcaster as well. And I think it's something that people will appreciate with Mark Jones at a certain point. That Mark Jones is, the one of the play-by-play voices of the Sacramento Kings. I know a lot of people wish he was here all the time. That's just not the way it works, unless the Kings want to come up with national TV money to have Mark Jones here full time. But Mark Jones is another one of those guys he's been there. He's called just about everything, and it's we get to see these living legends, even if you don't appreciate them as that when they're at even Mark Jones' age. He's still got a lot left in him. Where Vin Scully just kept going and going, and just like Gary Gerald has been the voice of the Kings for. What are we going on? This will be the 38th season of Kings basketball, and it's incredible. And they become part of your experience with a team. I've talked about it many times of like cleaning the grill at Big A's Drive-In as a teenager with the radio blaring and Gary Gerald describing the game. The action moving from left to right on your dial. Just like the way that they paint a picture is just beautiful. And I think it's a lost art that, a different generation, a different way of viewing and consuming your sports content. But it's beautiful in the way that they do it. And really thoughts and prayers go out to his family. He lived. Go ahead.
No, it's especially for baseball, because baseball's it's the slow burn. And Brenden and I were talking right before while you were fixing your computer issues. And he's what do you call yourselves, Brenden? Millennials? Not millennials. What's the
Gen Z would be next.
Z?
I think I'm right on the edge.
He was very appreciative of the pitch clock that they have, especially in minor league baseball, and they kind of keep guys to stick to it to keep the flow of the game moving, and they didn't have that. Like, you're talking about a guy who called games in the 50s, like playoff games, a game 7 in the 50s, and the downtime in between pitches and at bats, and he's got to paint the picture and tell him everything he's seeing, and he worked alone for the majority of his career. He didn't have another a color analyst with him. He'd always work alone. So yeah, just major props. And actually, James, you brought up something with Mark Jones. I realized we talked a lot about summer league, but I kind of want to give him a little love here for a second, because this struck me. You mentioned, obviously, hey, if the Kings give him national money, he'd probably stick around and not do so much of the national stuff. It's why having someone like Mark Jones as part of your broadcast is so special and so cool. Like, you can think of like the Knicks, and they've got Mike Breen, right? And he's got to share his duties with all these different things. But seeing him at Summer League and knowing what they bring the broadcasters through, both NBA TV and ESPN, you're talking about a whole day's worth of games. And I think Mark was on like 3 or 4 different games at any given day. And the Kings ended up playing on one of his days off, and he's put through the gamut. He's got meetings, he's got all these things that are going, and the one day he had off, he still made a point to get to the gym and watch the Kings and not necessarily utilize his media pass. Like, he's like in the crowd with like fans and kind of a little bit anonymous there, and I just kind of saw him and sat down with him for a few minutes and after one of the games, and it was just, here he is, just a basketball junkie, just still taking in, wanted to support the Kings team. And then I think he watched the game afterwards as well, and just really incredible work ethic that guy has. And because like I say, I know you're just calling basketball games, but it's a pretty brutal schedule, and they're trying different people out. Like, I know a young reporter like Jason Dumas, who works for Cron in the Bay Area. He was a sideline reporter for NBA TV, trying to get. That's how a lot of, it's almost like I say, a summer league for everyone. Everyone kind of gets their opportunity, and it's an opportunity to look at different talent. And seeing Jason down there as being part of the broadcast is just an example of someone who isn't necessarily part of that realm of broadcasters yet, but could be that next new wave. And Mark is there to kind of usher in some of that new people as well.
I think the thing that's always impressed me the most with Mark, and that I always really enjoy, is the storytelling. Like, he always has this random detail or story about a player, and just appreciating like all the behind the scenes networking and asking questions and getting those stories for him to share them. Like, because he has one every single broadcast. He has multiple crazy stories. And it's just like going above and beyond, even outside of the broadcast and his preparation. Like, Mark is phenomenal to have in Sacramento.
Yeah, I think it brings me back to the Vin Scully story. I don't know if you guys saw, everyone's been putting up clips, right? And they said that Vin Scully had a way of telling a story that lasted exactly as long as it needed to last. So whether it's a batter or it's an inning, he always had his story wrapping up right at the right time. And I don't know how you do that in baseball, because someone can ground into a double play, but just there's a feel to him. But I was watching this clip with Johnny Gomes, right, and former Oakland A, former Boston Celtic, and he's telling one of those Mark Jones stories that Vin Scully is, and Vin Scully is basically telling this story about how at age like 12, like, someone brought a wolf, like a real wolf, to Johnny Gomes' grandma's house or grandpa's house, something like this. And the guy told him, he said, "Hey, I'm going to go pet your dog." And he's like, "It's not a dog, it's a wolf. Stay away from it. Do not go near it." Well, he didn't listen. And next thing you know, the wolf like busted loose and like tracked him down and had him on the ground, was about to take like a big bite out of him. And Johnny Gomes just like gave in, like, "I've lost and I'm going to die." And the wolf like, "Oh, that's weird," and backed off because he just gave up. And he's telling this story in the middle of the broadcast about Johnny Gomes being attacked by a wolf, calls him the Wolf Man, as he grounds out to he shoots a ball past the third baseman into left field for a single. And was the timing of it, everything was amazing. It's almost like he watched it back and timed his story specifically to end with Johnny Gomes hitting a single into left field. But it was magical the way he does that. And I bring it up because Mark Jones, every single broadcast, he's got some weird story that, like, it's like, "Oh, that's weird. Like, where did that one even come from?" And it's because he does spend some time. He spends some time talking to players, and it's not about X's and O's. It's almost like they have this line of question. "Hey, what's the weirdest thing ever happened to you?" And then,
you ever had any run-ins with any wolves, possibly, Davion?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how they get these stories, because when you're in the grind of it, you sort of miss that these things have happened. Sometimes you go back and you research players and you're like, oh, that's a weird story. I'm going to bring that up, which we've I've done plenty of times in writing and stuff. But Mark always has a tendency to like hit the right chord, right? There's just something random, especially
whenever there's silence. Mark fills it, and that's what we're here for. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm back. I don't know how long ago I busted out, but yeah.
You said especially when? Uh-oh.
I don't know.
It's all good.
Yeah. I just like it. Oh, when you're watching a blowout in the third quarter, and then you're like, okay, we gotta stick around and see if Mark Jones has any other crazy story to go with this, because that's kind of what he brings to the table.
Good thing the Kings never have blowouts in the third quarter.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna cover a couple of things, and I was on the interwebs this morning, and someone posted this picture of how incredible the Western Conference is going to be, and all of these big threes from around the Western Conference. And they showed 8 different teams, and of the 8 teams, the Sacramento Kings were not one of the 8. And we kind of looked closer, and Dallas isn't one of the 8, Portland isn't one of the 8, Utah isn't one of the 8. And then you start to think, where exactly are the Kings when it comes to this Western Conference? And I think maybe a more intriguing question, because if we look at this graphic and we see some of the big threes that they're considering on each team, who would be your Kings big 3? I mean, we know 1 and 2 pretty easy, but I guess we'll start there. Sean, what do you got?
I mean, is it safe to say, and look, me being just the negative guy, do they have a big 3? Like, is it okay if you don't have a big 3? If you have to just put somebody there, because I think it's going to change. I honestly think this year it'll probably change. I think you can make the argument for someone like Kevin Huerter, who's the new kid on the block. But to me, I think right now, as the team stands, I think you have to go Fox, Sabonis, and Harrison Barnes.
Mm-hmm.
I truly feel that's just the appropriate way to do it. But I feel like it will be Fox, Sabonis, Huerter, or possibly Fox, Sabonis, and Keegan Murray.
Yeah.
But I think it's okay if you don't have one yet. I really do. Like I was looking, the graphic that you brought up. I will say there was only one part that really kind of made me snicker, if you will, and in looking at the Denver Nuggets, like we're just throwing Michael Porter Jr. on there as if he's a big 3. I know you're paying him like a big 3, but it's okay. You've got the MVP. You don't have to. I mean, maybe just for the sake of the graphic, you could have just made maybe a healthy Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic just bigger than having to throw a third person in there. Maybe your third person's Michael Malone.
We haven't seen a healthy Jamal Murray. So, yeah, I mean, I guess we could do that. We could pick apart, because I look at the Golden State Warriors and Jordan Poole, Wiggins, and Curry, and I start scratching my head. I'm like, okay, that's strange. And then I look at Booker and Paul and Ayton, and I think to myself, is Ayton really that much better than anything else that you would put as a Kings third? I look at the Clippers. They have, of course, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard and John Wall. John Wall hasn't played in like a year and a half, and, who knows? You got the Lakers, and you got, of course, LeBron and AD and Russell Westbrook. I can find flaws in that group. And then even Memphis, Desmond Bane with Ja and the Triple J. That one is like, okay, you're going to give New Orleans Zion. Like, all right, well, the dude hasn't played in well over a year. So I'm not sure that, I think you're right that, like, finding a big 3 for Sacramento is probably difficult at this moment. And it probably would be Harrison Barnes, which I think Harrison Barnes is as good as some of the other players on that list. But I think it will change as well. Brenden, where are you at with what we're seeing?
I think it's HB right now as well. But I think that if I were forced to label a big 3 for the Sacramento Kings, I think I'm putting Keegan. Because I think that I'm just thinking a little bit more long term, like who I see as the core three of this team. And it goes beyond that, but just for the sake of this conversation, like I think of Fox, Sabonis, and Keegan Murray as the three most important players on Sacramento's roster. Maybe not when it comes to production next year. I think it's actually a really interesting conversation of like who is going to be the third guy. I think Sean did a good job walking through the different possibilities. Like I think more likely than not it's HB, but there's a chance that it's Kevin Huerter. There's a chance that Keegan Murray looks really good in year one on the offensive end as a third or fourth option. Like, so I think that's something that's been interesting to me recently. Like I wonder, and maybe we'll get to this a little bit later, who is going to be, how it's going to work after Fox and Sabonis. Like, is it just going to be someone's night every once in a while, and you're going to have a couple different guys that average 12, 13 points, and every once in a while one of 3 or 4 different groups of guys, because Malik Monk could do it at any night. There's other guys. You never know if Terrence Davis is going to have a night. Davion Mitchell, Rashawn Holmes is still really good at basketball. So you never really know who's going to have it, but it's interesting to me. Rashawn Holmes is good at basketball when he's the only big on the floor, but I think that it is intriguing to me, and right now I would say HB when it comes to production next year, but when you're talking long-term, like what is the big three of the Sacramento Kings right now, I would put Keegan, just because in my mind he's more like long-term plan.
I think that's a good way to differentiate, like who, from a production standpoint, right, which is kind of what I was talking to, and then obviously what means more to the franchise. And I think that's actually probably the bigger discussion, because to your point about, Zion Williamson and him having not played last year and kind of the things he's gone through, and even someone like me kind of poking fun a little bit of Michael Porter Jr., like paying him like he is, yeah, maybe it is. Maybe it's more of the, what does it mean to your overall franchise? Like, who's the more important piece to your franchise? So I feel like having maybe 2 big threes, I would agree with you. Yeah, Keegan Murray, De'Aaron Fox, and Domantas Sabonis would be that big three for Sacramento in that regard, in terms of the most important pieces to your franchise.
The real answer here is De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, and Donovan Mitchell, obviously, by the way.
I thought you were going to say Keon Ellis.
Oh. Well, no.
Oh, wow, see?
He can't be grouped with other people. He's tier 1, and then there's the big three, Yeah.
That's amazing. I found it interesting too, because I look at Dallas and I'm like, okay, well, Dallas is going to be part of the playoff picture. I mean, they made it to the Western Conference Finals last year. They did lose a big piece, but who is their big three? I mean, it's Christian.
An omission.
Maybe Christian Wood and Luka Doncic and Dinwiddie or Hardaway, and then I start looking at Utah and I'm like, how disrespectful they trade away Rudy Gobert, and then you automatically think that they're done. Just because they lost Gobert doesn't mean they're done. Like, if they lose Mitchell as well, then yeah, they're done. But you're telling me that Jordan Clarkson and Bogdanovich and Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley, like we could piece together a big three there that's probably better than any big three the Kings can piece together. And so I just think it's interesting the way that we see it. Even Portland, you got it would be a top-heavy big three, more of a triangle than a big three. But, you got Damian Lillard, you got Simon, you got Jeremy Grant. So I think the Kings are in the running there with a lot of these teams if you look at the big three idea. But I also think the Kings are built differently, where they're more of a 8-man squad than they are a big three, where I would take the Kings 8-man squad over the Lakers 8-man squad, and I wouldn't take their big three over the Lakers big three, but I certainly would take the 8-man squad over what they're going to run out there. And I think it's just like an interesting exercise to kind of see how you frame a team, and I guess how the teams will stack up once the season starts. But if you look at the list and then we see the omitted teams, where do you guys see the Kings as of August 4th? Where do you see them? Do you see them as an 11-12? Do you see them as a 7-8? Like, where do you think they can be in this season? I don't know if can be, or where do you
maybe
think
they
should? Or could. No, but I mean, if you were to peg them at like where you would put them at this point,
Yeah.
Sean, what do you got?
You can see the agony on my face.
You don't want to do it, do you?
I cool because I mean, God,
It's hard.
I don't know. I don't. You know, it's like. Go ahead, Brenden. Maybe you can offer. I don't know that I'm capable of playing that game. I just don't. I don't know. I really don't know. You know, you kind of have to see it first. You want to see how things shape up and get a little bit of a feel for it a little bit more. Because on paper, like, sure, I guess they could compete and be as high as 6. I don't think I see them going past that, but I think they could be as bad as 11. You know, like I don't. That's such a big span, and I don't think it appropriately answers the question.
Sean has given like vibes of like a player that just gives you the most basic answers in media, these cookie cutter answers. Anytime you ask him about a record, well, it's hard to talk about that. Yeah.
Full Costa Kufis. Yeah,
Yeah.
We're going to go out there. We're
no
going to try our
cliches.
best. And we're going to let the chips fall where they may. And, you know, whatever. As long as we're in it together, you know, we should just be fine. And, you know, and we'll be back again. Tomorrow's a new day. Yeah.
Yeah. Throw a movie reference in there at some point, and you got
go.
Sean Cunningham.
Yes. Yeah. There it is. To a T. To a T.
I will say a 9 to 11 seed. And maybe that's too wide of a range. If it is, let me know for kind of what you're asking. But I think that's sort of what we're talking about. Sean, you have no room to talk here.
No, that's the point. Like it's there's so much vast real estate between those spots that it doesn't appropriately answer the question because you can't. Like, certainly they're capable. Like, if things go right and injuries happen in the West, like, you're capable of doing some things that might get you over the hump and exceed some expectations. I just don't know what those expectations should be other than being a postseason playoff team. Like, your postseason, that should be your expectation, right? But, like, where are they? Are they better than Denver? No, I don't think so. Are they better than the Lakers? Probably not. I mean, maybe, you know, like, they're going to do another double down on what they have there. And if everyone's healthy and you've got LeBron and AD, to James's point, is that 1 and 2 better than the 1 through 8 that you feel better of roster-wise and quality depth-wise? Sure, but can that big 2 win you more games? And we've seen a big 2 win more games in the regular season sometimes than quality depth has. So it's just such a tough question, man. You got Eurobasket coming up. What if I don't want to put what if something happens to one of these teams? I know, man.
Don't you?
Hey, I didn't say to any team in particular. I said to one of these teams. So, you know.
Yeah. So I guess if I'm going to ask you guys to answer the question, then I mean, I think we do have to look at it with a broad stroke. They are probably a 6 through 11 team.
Whoa.
I think we can think of 4 teams that are below them, and we can think of 5 or 6 teams that there's no way that they can be as good as, barring major injuries. You know, you've got Memphis, you've got Golden State, you've got Phoenix. Like, who else? Help me out here.
The interesting one to me, to be honest, is Utah. Like, I think Utah has a bigger range where it's like, yeah, you could be pretty decent. I don't think anyone's going to expect anything from you, but I could also see you not making the playoffs at all. Like, seriously, like, first-time head coach. I know they've got talent over there. I know that. I get it. But knowing everything that franchise has kind of gone through and rumors surrounding Davion Mitchell, and here you have a first-time head coach, like, it would not shock me to be, it wouldn't shock me to see them fall out of the race. It really wouldn't. Especially again, here we are in August, like you said, James. If they move Davion Mitchell, then you almost expect it. But even if you don't, okay, like, what's it going to look like?
I don't think it will be horrible. Well, I mean, I guess you don't have any bigs at this point. But then I'd even throw this at you, Sean. You say that, but you don't mention that the Lakers also have a first-time head coach. And that thing could go all kinds of sideways, especially
100%.
if he tries the friendo approach that it kind of seems like he's trying to do. Hey, you know, we're all friends, you know, let's all do this together. That may not work.
The caveat there is you already saw them terrible. Like, they were bad. So you're going from Utah, who was, I mean, top one of the top teams in the West, and I'm not saying just because of Gobert. I mean, obviously they've made a couple other moves as well, but can that team? I don't think that team's going to duplicate a top seed in the West, even if they don't make any other moves going forward. But if they stay as is with a new head coach, I could see them being pretty good, maybe from the range of 4. But I could also see them not making the playoffs. Like that's kind of the range I'm talking about. So, like to me, I see teams that have a bigger range than what the Kings do. Like again, 6 through 11, that's pretty crazy to talk about. But I mean, we could talk about Utah and say like, could you be 4 or 5, or could you be 12? And that's even bigger to me.
Yeah, and I mean, just going through and looking at, there are other wild card teams too. So you can't expect that Minnesota is going to get. You can't guarantee that Minnesota's going to get better. Minnesota could be a 3 seed. They could also be an 11-12. They could be a team that totally falls off just because you go out and get Gobert and you gave all this capital up. The true thing that you're banking on there is that Anthony Edwards like develops and becomes a superstar, and then that Cat and Gobert don't get in the way. But you also gave up like your heart and your soul in Pat Bev in order to make that move. And so, I mean, it does make for some interesting. I think there are a lot of teams that are on this crazy slide rule this year. I mean, the Pelicans, same exact thing. They could be good. They could also just be not good at all. Like we could see the same exact thing that's happened the last couple of years with that team. Even they haven't even ever had the opportunity to play like Valanciunas and Zion together. They don't even know if that will work. And you're just like, it'll be fine. It'll all work itself out. Oh, maybe it will. Maybe it won't. But you're taking a bunch of shots away from Brandon Ingram. You're taking a bunch of shots away from CJ McCollum to give them to a guy who not only can't stay healthy, but almost won't stay healthy. Like it's almost like a decision that he makes that he just, whether he's going to play or not. And so I think there's a lot of variables, and the whole slow and steady wins a race might be the way that the Kings end up. That's why I put them all the way up at 6 and all the way down to 11. I think there's a possibility that they're just steady the whole year and improve defensively the whole year and build chemistry the whole year. And by the time you get to the end, they're a strong team.
And stay healthy.
I think there's a big grouping, kind of like we're talking about here, of teams with a wide variety of potential outcomes, and Sacramento falls into that, and that's what makes this so complicated, and there's always going to be one team that we didn't expect to be as good. Like if OKC actually gives a damn and plays all their guys, I don't think it's like unreasonable that they are in the play. Like I don't know that I'm betting on it, but I think it's a possibility. Like someone could be better than we're expecting, and one of these top teams might not be as good as we're expecting. So I'm going somewhere for the Kings between 2 and 14 in my eyes.
Jesus Christ.
Well, I deserve that. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. All right, gun to your head, okay? How do you expect 1 through 3 to play out by playoff time? So give me the top 3 seeds in the West if there was a gun to your head, because I think that might be a little bit more of a
Golden State, Phoenix,
any variation of them, right?
Probably Memphis again. And Memphis because John Morant missed like 22 games and they were still like all the way up there. I think that they're a team that's like they're pushing the ceiling.
I'm going to put Denver.
That's what over Phoenix?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. I like Denver.
Who do you think finishes number 1?
I think Denver. Like I actually was thinking about this the other day. I think that I would pick Denver to win the whole thing, like, or at least to get out of the West. Like,
yeah,
I really think that Denver's really good. I really like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope as a complimentary piece. I know they gave up Monte Morris in that. I think that Michael Porter Jr., I know we kind of touched on him a little bit earlier, but he did average 19 on 54% from the field, 44% from 3. Like, I think there is questions of like self-creation when it comes, and that's something that you want from a guy that you're paying that type of money. But when he's playing off of Jokic, he doesn't really have to do that. I think that Jamal Murray is ridiculously good. Like, I think that Denver's going to be a really, really good team.
Did they add enough shooting? Even if having Jamal Murray back and Michael Porter Jr. back, I still don't think they have enough shooting.
Yeah, and they lost Austin Rivers, which I know, like, I've never been an Austin Rivers guy, but he's a professional 3-point shooter, a professional marksman.
Aaron Gordon just isn't that dude.
No,
but I think he looks better when he's the fourth guy compared to like the second that he was last year.
Yeah. But they need shooting to me, and I think they can still get it. And I think midseason trade, whatever. But I agree with you. I think they're going to be a top 3 team. I don't know that they're going to be number 1. I have a real weird feeling about Memphis this year. Like, I think Memphis is going to be. I think they could be number 1.
I think Phoenix is going to not be the same like force in the regular season.
I agree with you.
I'm a little skeptical of like what is the chemistry going to be like with this team after everything that just happened with Ayton, and could there be more roster shakeup? Is CP3's health is still a question. Like he's been pretty healthy these last couple years, but can't forget kind of his previous concerns there. Like if CP goes down and Ayton's unhappy, like I think there's a world where you're talking about the Suns at like a 5 seed.
And just so we're fair here, because I'm sure there's somebody listening to this going, well, why is it that you can have this nuanced discussion about 1 through 3 and not plug the Kings in anywhere? And the obvious answer there is because you have more of a sample size of what those teams look like. They're not adding integral pieces that are going to factor in, and you've never seen them play with one another under a head coach that you've never seen them play for. So there's too many variables that you just don't have answers for compared to a team like Memphis who, and the Warriors, who you have this sample size and you know what their core looks like and you know some of the pieces that they've added. And when they've added these pieces, it's not like you're supplanting one of their big 3. And I think going back to the discussion of the big 3, you already know what those big 3 look like. Now, obviously, the Warriors graphic was a little janky there because you had somebody like Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins over guys like Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. But you know what your core looks like, you know what your coaching staff looks like, and you know what they're capable of. This Kings team, I'm sorry, you just don't have anything on paper to where you can really look at that and go, this is what you're capable of. And again, I think that you have the possibility that everything really clicks well. And I think if everything goes entirely well at their best, they could probably be 6 right now. And I think if that plays the game, that you can see a world where that exists, as Brenden says, with the Phoenix Suns falling to 5th. But you can also, and it shouldn't shock anyone, you can also see them not making the play-in tournament. And while that would be incredibly disappointing, would it really shock a lot of people? You shouldn't be shocked at this point.
No, and I think people forget the natural progression of NBA teams. Typically, a team sneaks into the back end of the playoffs. Like there's 7-8.
They forget because the Kings don't naturally progress.
Yes, exactly. Well, but even if we look at the play-in era, you're usually like a 7 through 10 team, and you're somewhere in the middle of that. What you don't want to do is get stalled out as like a 7, 8, 9, 10 team. The Kings have been stalled out as like like an 11, 12, 13 team for a long time. But my point is that the typical progression of an NBA team is that they barely squeak in one year and they learn something, and they come back the next year and they're better, and they might move up 2 spots, and then they get bounced. And then by year 3 of making the playoffs, that's usually when they hit this crazy accelerator. So whether it's players learning, players, figuring out that you have to dedicate yourself more to sort of getting over the hump at the end of the day, not worrying about your regular season record, but worrying more about like saving enough for the playoffs. Or a team goes out and says, okay, we're 1 piece away, and they make some monstrous deal to take them from a 6 seed up to, a 1, 2, 3. So we haven't got to see that progression in Sacramento. Brendan's right. But like the Kings, that's where, Brenden, I think I disagree with you quite often when you say, what is the ceiling for this team? Because I think, like Sean, the ceiling for this team this year is probably a 6. Now, the floor is probably an 11. They'll be somewhere in between there. but I don't see their ceiling stretching. But if they somehow get to a 6, 7, 8, I would expect their ceiling next season to be higher, to be a 5, 6, 7 or a 4, 5, 6, because that's kind of the natural progression that teams take as they're growing and building and trying to create something. And it's just we haven't seen it. It's been derailed for so long in Sacramento, we haven't seen it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that especially since some of the guys that they brought in were younger than maybe I would have expected, that I have a little bit more optimism when it comes to like the upside and ceiling of this roster. But without going too deep into that same conversation, I guess, I just think that like the whole debate, like kind of what we were talking about with the Lakers, like do you take the top end talent or the depth? I think that you obviously have to have both, but it's an interesting discussion of what is more important and what's more valuable, because there could be a year, this could be the year that the Kings have good depth, and they're only going to go as far still, in my mind, as those top players are able to take you. So I think the question of the ceiling in my mind is how good can Fox and Sabonis really be? And I guess I don't quite know the answer to that, but as of now, like neither one is a clear-cut star in my mind.
Okay. Well, I get it. I mean, I think it's a good discussion. It's a good off-season discussion. And I think there's also, like, there's a chance that this is not the roster that they walk into the season with. We're getting closer and closer to...
Nor finish the season with.
Yeah. Oh, like certainly. Yes.
Yeah, like if you think, like, I think people, when they go, oh, this is a 35-win team, 40-win team, whatever it is, it's like you're looking at what your team is right now, and then you look at the end of the year, and even though they've added somebody like Domantas Sabonis midseason last season, if you get, well, I had them at 33 wins and they fell short of that, and it's like, well, yeah, but you had them at 33 wins based off a Tyrese Halliburton squad, and then they finished with a Domantas Sabonis squad, and so that team looked different, but they still ended up short. Like, whatever you're predicting right now, that team is going to look different come April. So,
yeah.
This is a team that's primed not only to make a trade now, and it's kind of, things that we're expecting still, but if they can keep their head anywhere around the 8th spot in the West, and let's say you're 3 games around 8, it's kind of like baseball. Like, you need to go out and make that move to add to help you right away to try and get you into a playoff spot, and hopefully that piece is rather significant. The difference is last year that wasn't the move. Last year was a franchise-altering move because you shifted course completely. You drew a fine line in the sand and said, this is what we're going to mortgage future for the now and for the present, and that's a different type of move rather than trading for somebody like I think Brenden mention, or James, you mentioned Patrick Beverley a minute ago, like a role player who comes in who can help push you and better you in a significant factor of your roster right away.
Yeah, I'd even say, like, if there were a move that would be like more defining than anything else right now, I don't know that you can move Harrison Barnes for the player that would be better than Harrison Barnes. And if the Kings had more space in the backcourt, I would go to Utah and I would try to get a guy like Pat Bev, because it brings a personality that can shift you from being like, we keep talking about the floor, which is around 11, and I don't think that's the floor anymore. I think the floor becomes a 7. And it's not because Patrick Beverley is so much better than everybody else. It's that he brings in a personality that changes a culture of a team and has proven time and time again to actually work and become, like hold a team into a playoff stretch where they have no business being there. And that's to me where, like, I don't know that the Kings can make some like crazy defining move to go pick up like a great 3-and-D wing that will change everything. I don't think there's a Ben Simmons deal down the pipeline. But I do think that there is a possibility to do a smaller move that could almost be as impactful short-term, not long-term, but short-term, and make a move like that. But again, I don't know where he would fit into the whole world of what the Sacramento Kings have, which it brings us to our other topic today, which is, we're going to start talking about position battles. And, training camp is a ways away, but I think we can already see that there is at least one major position battle for a starting job I think most of the other starting jobs are already taken, and it's going to be like competition for minutes. But the shooting guard spot on this team seems to be the one spot where I think we expect, well, I expect that Herter will probably get the first shot, but I can also see a world where Malik Monk comes in and takes the job because he's played next to De'Aaron Fox. I could see a world where Davion Mitchell starts alongside De'Aaron Fox because he's a defensive force. I could see.
Don't say it.
I can't see a world where Keon Ellis starts.
Oh, I can.
Or a world where Terrence Davis starts. But if you guys were choosing right now, let's just start with you, Brenden. What do you got? If you're looking at the shooting guard position, what is your depth chart right now? Because this is something I did on the Kings beat on Wednesday. I basically broke down the depth chart and kind of where it looks like it's at right now. But I think it has a chance to change during training camp.
Yeah, I think for me it's pretty easy that it's Kevin Herter. I don't, in my mind, have all too much of a question there. I think what'll be interesting is kind of finagling his minutes, because I think he kind of needs to be maybe not the backup three, but play a handful of minutes at the three as well. Like, I think there's a lot of lineups where we see Herter and another one of these guards that we're talking about, a Terrence Davis, a Malik Monk, Davion Mitchell. So I think in my mind, the starting lineup that makes the most sense easily to me is Fox, Herter, Murray, Barnes, and Sabonis. That's easily the direction that I would go.
What do you got, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. That's probably the roster I would start with. As it pertains to Herter, yeah, definitely. He's the starting two guard in my mind. I think he will play three at times, but he's the starting two guard in my mind, and I don't really see. I don't see the Malik Monk starting happening unless there's injury or something crazy happens down the stretch. But I think he's going to be your starting three, and I think that even if you end up playing a bulk rotation where Monk and Herter are on the floor together, I just don't see him starting that way, though.
What about Rashawn Holmes? Sean, what's going on here?
I didn't say I would start Rashawn Holmes for the record. Again, Jesus. My God.
I'm with you.
Those people are crazy. Yeah, the internet is a wild place.
I might be feeding the fire, but...
Yeah, it's fine. I do love the comments. I get more amused at comments, and it's just an awesome place.
Yeah. Well, I think this plays into a larger question. I agree, Herter at 6'7", he's a guy who it gives you a big guard, which the Kings haven't had. It gives you a big shooting guard that realistically I think has been undervalued for some time. I think that if you look at his career stats and he's kind of plateaued at 12 points a game, I don't expect that to be his stats in Sacramento at all. I expect him to have a much more offensive impact on the entire, what's happening. But I think that there's going to be like an 8/9 man rotation, and it's pretty easy for me to come up with 8. And then you got like 7 other guys fighting for who's going to be the 8.5 to that half to 9. So if you look at the backcourt with Fox and Mitchell, I mean, I got Fox slated for a minute, like 35 minutes, 34 to 36 minutes. If I look at Davion, I got him slated for 28 to 30 minutes. Okay, you just ate up like all but 30 something minutes of your 96 minutes in the backcourt. So where do you find the other minutes? Because, again, I think a guy like Malik Monk probably going to play 24 to 28 minutes for the Sacramento Kings. I think Herter's going to play 30 minutes. Okay, now I'm way too high on minutes. So where do I get these minutes from? And so I think a lot of those minutes are going to come at the small forward position. I think Harrison Barnes is going to play a lot of minutes at the 4 again. I think Rashawn Holmes, you're going to have to balance out how to fit Rashawn Holmes in with Sabonis, but also as a backup. I think Keegan Murray is probably going to start at the 4, and I expect him to play early in the season 24 to 26, but late in the season 28 plus, maybe even more than that. So, like, I think that's 8 players right there. So how does Chimezi Metu or Chima Moneki or KZ Akpala or Trey Lyles,
Terrence Davis,
Alex Len,
Keon
Ellis playing 47 minutes a night. Like, how does this happen? And I think that's where you can start to piece together a pretty tight rotation. But then who's going to be that guy who sort of wins out the extra spots? So I think while like the shooting guard spot, there are a lot of people who think, oh man, the combination of Fox and Monk together. I like the combination of Davion and Monk together much more coming off the bench, because now you have your defensive guy and your offensive weapon. I like the idea of a big guard starting next to De'Aaron Fox in case you do play against bigger players and you need him to take on a strong guy as opposed to, and let Fox work. So I think we're starting to see sort of a rotation. Now, where does it go from there? How do these other guys get in the mix?
What interests me, and I heard you guys say this on the last episode too, you just mentioned like 28 to 30 minutes for Davion, right? And I think Sean had a similar number, like 28, I think you said last episode. I'm not like convinced. Like, I feel like that's a lot of minutes for a bench player, and I'm not convinced it's even the first guy off the bench. Like, I don't know. I'm not. Are we sure that last year, right, Davion averaged 27 minutes per game. The last 11 games when he was starting and running the show, he averaged 39. And in the other 64, he was about 25. And are we sure with Herter coming in, with Monk coming in, I know that Buddy and Tyrese are out. Like, I guess that those kind of cancel each other out when it comes to rotational opportunity. But, like, I'm not so convinced that Davion's going to have 30 minutes.
Sean, you got something on that?
I think it'll be pretty consistent. I know positionless basketball and all that, but just for what he brings defensively, I think is going to be – and they've added a lot of length to where they can have a guy like him on the floor who doesn't have that type of length. So I think that's especially what he brings defensively, and the way Fox is. And
well, it's just the shooting, though, right? Like, I'm not convinced that you can play Fox, Sabonis, and Davion Mitchell. Davion shot 32% on catch and shoot threes last year. Like,
I'm not either, by the way. But no, I just think as a grand scope, I think he's going to average right around 28 minutes a game. I think it's going to be in that discussion, and I think, for them, it should be pretty imperative to have that type of production from him. I don't think the addition of Malik Monk and Kevin Herter, and I just don't think that will hurt his minutes. I really don't.
Yeah, I'm of the same opinion.
I think because also, like, you factor in Dellavedova, I don't really feel like he factors much if he's there at all.
Yeah.
And again, like, you have guys that are better playmaking in other positions, which is true. But I still feel like you're going to have to rely on somebody like Davion Mitchell to be a primary playmaker, especially when with Fox. I think you're going to need that. I think you want to have playmaking at almost every position, and by virtue of just him being the backup point guard and obviously what he did last year, I think they're still going to utilize him a lot, especially considering what he brings defensively.
Yeah, I might be going too crazy for shooting, but I think that's really where this comes from on my end, is that, like, you have options like a Malik Monk who's shooting 41% last year on catch and shoot threes to Davion's 32. Like, I just think that spacing is so important, and maybe that's just something that I'm a little tunnel visioned on. And obviously Mike Brown is touted as a very defensive guy, and I could see him really enjoying Davion for that reason. And Davion's talked a lot about how his shot is the number one thing he's working on this offseason, so if there's improvement there. But that's definitely where it stems from with me, is that, like, when Fox and Sabonis are both on the floor, I think it's hard to play another guy that defenses don't care about from beyond the perimeter, because that's the point it got to with Davion last year. We saw it with Mezzi. We saw it with Bagley. Like, if you have another guy out there that defenses do not care about from beyond three, like, it just makes things so much more difficult. And you have guys like last year, it was like, okay, well, Bagley's not hitting shots. I guess we're going to try Mezzi, another guy that's probably not really a shooter, but what other options do we have? And this year, it's like, okay, Davion's not hitting his shots. Well, we do have two really good shooters right here in Herter and Monk.
Yeah, I think my biggest, like, where I would argue this is that, like, watching Davion Mitchell, he's a better shooter than he was last year. Yeah, I think he will shoot closer to 37 to 39% for his career from three. Like, he's just too good of a shooter. He works too hard. His mechanics are too refined. And I think when we talk about spacing, what we forget is that if you have players that space the floor, they space the floor for everybody. And guys like Fox and Sabonis, they actually space the floor for shooters as much as shooters space the floor for them. So because the entire focus of a defense is going to be on ways to stop Fox, or ways to stop Sabonis, or ways to stop Fox and Sabonis when they're together, it creates openings for the other guys on the perimeter. So while he didn't hit his shots last year, I think it was a little bit of an anomaly. And I look back, while you guys were talking about, I look back to last season and Gary Payton for the Warriors. He didn't play as many minutes. He only played like 18 minutes, but he shot 35.8% from three. And that's kind of where, if you can get Davion even to that level, it really does open everything up. He opens for them. They open for him. His ability to break guys down off the dribble, to pull up and to stop and pop at like 15 to 18 feet is big. So I think he can mask a lot of the issues as long as he isn't just a bad three-point shooter. And his college career told me he wasn't. Well, his final year in college showed me he wasn't. But also his work ethic and the way that his mechanics, I just don't see him being a poor three-point shooter.
There's definitely lots of reasons to believe. I agree. I think like the form looks really good. I mean, I'm far from a shot doctor or anything like that, but I think there's reason to believe when it comes to that, and the work ethic, obviously. And anyone in the coaching staff will always tell you that they believe in Davion and just rave about him. But I don't know. I think that I see him being a good shooter. I just can't shake that senior year at Baylor is the outlier right now. Like, he wasn't a good shooter last year. He's also really bad from the free throw line, by the way. And I feel like this doesn't get talked about. He's like really bad from the free throw line. He shot 65% throughout his college career. I don't have his Sacramento number in front of me right now. 65% last year.
Yeah.
On just over one a game. He hardly gets to the line. But like, as of right now, that 44% that he shot his senior year at Baylor is the outlier, because the year before was 32%. His freshman year at Auburn was 28%. And even that year, he shot 44% from three. He shot 64% from the free throw line, which is here and there a decent indicator of shooting. So, like, I believe in it, and I think there's reasons to believe in it, and I get that. I just can't shake that, like, right now, there's only one outlier season where he actually was a good shooter.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. If you're looking at guys coming out of college and you want to know if they're going to improve as a three-point shooter, one of the easiest things to do is to look at their free throw percentage. And you're right, he's not a good free throw shooter. But these are like I don't buy it. For some reason with him, like, he passes the eye test for me, and I think he'll actually be okay.
And this is what Alvin Gentry said. Anytime, if I ever tried to like question Davion, like, some specific detail that I didn't feel like he was doing great, it was pretty much exactly what you said in response of like, he's going to figure it out. I believe in him.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. He's, as a player, he's one of those rare players that you do kind of go, okay, I think he'll work his way through it. And I also think he'll come in great shape, but he'll also understand that he can't just work himself into the ground all the time, especially if his role is increasing and stuff like that. Okay, so we're going to get to the business of basketball. And Brenden is going to take this over today. He's got some true or false questions, and he's going to... Yeah.
I know Sean loves to predict the future, so that's what we're going to do here.
Yeah.
Predictions. All right.
I will throw you guys some statements, and you go with true or false, or if you'd like to be hip with the times, we can go fact or cap, if you guys understand what I'm saying here.
I do. James, cap is what the young people say about a lie. So if that's something that's false, you go, okay. And he froze. His brain froze. It's not good.
Can't handle it.
It can't happen.
Yeah.
He can't. This is better than when he froze before, because we
had I froze. Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, I froze right in the middle of your explanation of cap, which you have to understand that I'm on the radio 3 times a week with D'Lo and Casey talking about these things. So, yes.
Gotcha. All right, so one of my first ones, we'll go with factor cap then, since you guys are young and hip. This one fits with what we were just talking about. Malik Monk will average more minutes per game than Davion Mitchell. and I'll give a little bit of context. Like I said, last year, Davion averaged 27.7 minutes per game, and Malik Monk with the Lakers averaged 28.1. But fact or cap, Malik Monk will average more minutes per game than Davion Mitchell. James.
Cap. Yeah, I think that Monk is going to be like the fireball coming off the bench, and he's going to have unlimited opportunities to shoot. But I think Davion is going to be in closing lineups, and he's going to be a guy that they rely on heavily. Like, we'll see a lot of 3-guard sets, especially early in the season with Fox and Davion and Kevin Huerter, with guys like either Keegan or Harrison Barnes at the 4 and Sabonis at the 5 closing out games. And I think he's going to play a bigger role, but that's just me.
I see it quite possible that he could average more, but I am going to go cap as well, only because I feel like for what Davion Mitchell brings to the basketball court positionally, especially, that's going to make a bigger opportunity for him to play a bigger role than somebody like Malik Monk, who's going to compete with more people from a scoring standpoint, if that makes sense. I just feel like there's not as much depth in the point guard position, even though I don't really love Davion Mitchell as a point guard. I think I've talked about that. He's more of a combo guard, in my opinion, but he's going to have to play the role of a point guard. And whereas Malik Monk, who may have the ball in his hands at times, is going to play the role of a shooting guard. So I know we talk a lot about positionless basketball, but I think as a result of that, I think it's going to be cap, because I think Davion Mitchell will have more opportunity.
Davion does definitely have an aspect that he might be the only player on the roster that he provides, with his point of attack defense and kind of just being a ball hound and really just being able to bother. I guess like KZ Okpala falls into that a little bit, but they're different positionally. So I will also say cap. If Huerter was not a part of the roster, I think I'd feel differently. Because I just think I'm obsessed with spacing and shooting. So I think that having Fox and Sabonis out there, again, 2 guys that are non-shooters, I think the 3 others need to be elite shooters. And I think that you have an opportunity to do that now. I think Fox, Sabonis, and then pick your 3 between Huerter, Monk, if you want to throw Lyles in there, but HB and Keegan. Lyles is the outlier of that grouping. But, yeah, I think that there's moments where Monk will play more, but I think it'll be pretty close. Next one,
I'm going to say barring injury too, I see a lot of lineups where Fox and Sabonis, or Fox and Mitchell, or Mitchell and Sabonis are going to be on the court at the same time. I think where we talk about there always has to be one of Fox or Sabonis on the court. I think there will always be 2 of Fox, Mitchell, and Sabonis on the court at all times. So my point would be, at the 6-minute mark of the first quarter, I think they'll probably pull De'Aaron Fox for Davion Mitchell. He'll play with Sabonis for the next 3 minutes. Fox will come back in at the 9-minute mark of the first quarter. Sabonis will come off the court. And then you'll just keep rolling with those 3, with 2 of them being on the court at most times. But that's just my opinion.
No, that makes sense. I think that we'll definitely see I would expect a lot of staggering, kind of like you just laid out. And it's interesting. I think that, the spacing is going to be interesting to me to see kind of how this all plays out throughout this season. And the whole idea of Davion being in a closing lineup, in my mind, is definitely still very reliant on how much improvement we see in this 3-point shot. Next one I got for you guys. One of Harrison Barnes or Rashawn Holmes, one or both, will be on the Sacramento Kings in the 2023-2024 season. Fact or cap?
That is fact, in my opinion.
So not this year, coming up, but the year after.
Wait. Hold on. Maybe I misunderstood. Say that one more time.
So not this season, because this year is what, 22-23, but the year after, one of HB or Rashawn Holmes will be on the roster still.
Okay, sorry. I want to change my answer. I'm going to say cap.
Cap? Think they're both gone?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with Sean. Yeah, I
I
think
thought
that
you were
there's
saying this season. I feel like an
No.
idiot. I was like, I'm ready for this one.
I think there's a possibility that one of them doesn't survive this season. Also, both of them doesn't survive this season specifically. But you can't just keep like a luxury item when you're not a team that can have luxury items on your roster, like Rashawn Holmes.
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely see, and obviously the two guys that are, I guess maybe you would say on the block, or the guys that are getting talked about the most in kind of trade conversations. The reason for that one, what do I have next for you guys? Fact or cap? The Sacramento Kings will have an all-star within the next 2 seasons. James?
Fact. I
Based on
think
what?
I have a feeling that they're going to get off to a decent start. They'll be in the hunt at the All-Star game. They'll have 2 players with All-Star level numbers, and one of those players will get rewarded because they're in the conversation.
And who do you think that is?
Fox and Sabonis. One of those two. Whether who's going to make it over who, I don't know. But I definitely think that there's a possibility for one or even both in the next 2 years.
Next 2 years, and you're saying, okay, I'm just gonna say cap. I can't picture it yet.
No. Fair enough.
All right.
The last All-Star was Boogie that made it 3 years in a row from 14 to 17, and before that, you guys know off the top of your head?
Brad Miller,
Brad
Peja
Miller.
Stojakovic.
Right. No 304.
2003.
Yeah.
304, yeah.
And I think that they can put up all-star quality numbers. That's not saying anything disparaging about them as professionals. It's going to take, I think, in my opinion, it would take a lot of wins. I think you'd have to be a top 4 team. I don't see that happening. So I think you need a roster move. I think you can be an all-star caliber player without being an all-star. And you're Sacramento. It's hard to get votes. It's hard to get the ultimate respect that you want. You've seen the way all-stars work in the past. Look at, even last year, I think I got laughed at by when Mike Connolly, and he ended up being an all-star. Put up all-star caliber numbers. He hadn't been there before. He's on a good team, and he ended up being a replacement that got there. So I think it's really tough, man.
My response would be that I think the Kings have a shot to be a 6-7 seed at the All-Star break and not finish that high, but be at that point at the All-Star break, and then the last 25 games when defenses tighten up, things change. And if they can get to that point, I think they will have an All-Star, because you're gonna be one of the talks of the NBA, a feel-good story. Mike Brown will be, doing a bunch of interviews. It'll be a really feel-good story at the All-Star break. That's where I would go.
I think the same. I think that like a narrative, obviously it's very reliant on team success, but I think that there will be a focus on like, wow, these guys really changed their trajectory and the view of the Sacramento Kings. One of these guys should be an all-star. There's part of me that is like, could it be split between the two? And then since they both get some votes that neither one ends up getting in, I guess I would go like De'Aaron between the two if I had to pick, just because like I think they're going to perform at very similar levels. And, maybe it gets looked at as Sabonis has had his All-Stars. Let's give this one to De'Aaron. Or I don't know. I think that they're both All-Star caliber players, kind of like what Sean was talking about. I agree. There's a lot of All-Star caliber guys that don't make the team. And I think that those two guys are in it. It's just completely reliant on team success. And I'm going to go with fact that one of them makes it within the next 2 years.
He's also a guard in the West.
That's true. I didn't think of positions. Yeah.
That's the toughest. That's the toughest one, man.
But
DeJounte Murray made it.
Yeah, and DeJounte left.
Mm-hmm. And there's no shade on DeJounte Murray. He's really good.
He is really good.
Yeah, but my point would be that at least one spot is open, and I mean, people could expect Clay, but there's also a possibility for Donovan Mitchell not to be in the West. And I don't think anyone is just like, hey, Portland is going to be great, and Damian Lillard are just going to slide right back into an all-star spot. I mean, it's possible, but I don't see Russell Westbrook being an all-star. I think that there's some openings that maybe there wasn't before.
Totally. Next one I got for you guys. Factor cap. The Sacramento Kings will have a bottom 10 defensive rating this next season. And for reference, last year was 27th. This is per NBA stats. 27th last year, 30th the year before. In the 9 years that I found NBA had defensive ratings, there was only 1 year that the Kings were not in the bottom 10, and they were 19th in 2019-20. Will this be the second time in the last decade that the Kings... Let me reword this again. The Kings, factor cap, the Sacramento Kings will have a bottom 10 defensive rating.
I say fact.
You think they'll be bottom 10?
Yeah, but I think they'll. I mean, you've got room to improve. I think you'll improve. I also think that's a good benchmark, like, of improvement, where, to show improvement from 1 year to the next, if you can improve to still, go from 27 to 22 to something like that, sure.
I think they're going to be really close.
Yeah.
I think that's like a bottom 10, but would I be surprised if they were 16, 17, 18, 19? I wouldn't be shocked. And the reason I believe that is because I think they're going to be one of the better rebounding teams in the league. Just because, they have Sabonis, but if you're playing Harrison Barnes primarily at the 3 and he's averaging 6.5 a game, that's pretty good. If you're playing Keegan Murray and he's averaging 7+, that's a lot of rebounds just between those 3 players. And then I think they've got an opportunity to be a really good rebounding team. And I think they'll also be a pretty tight offensive team. Like, I think their efficiency will be good because of the way they run through it. So I think their transition defense will be better because they won't be, the opposition will be pulling the ball out of the basket all the time. So I don't want to say that I believe that they're going to be I think they can be the 20th. I also think they could be like 16, but I would put them more like 20, 21, 22 if I were betting.
Factor cap, Mr. Hammer. The Kings will have a bottom 10 defensive rating.
He didn't play the game.
Fact.
He just gave the analysis. Yeah.
Fact.
I agree. I think I'm like right where you are. I think if I had to guess a specific number, I'd be like 22, 23. Improved on that end. Oh, do you lose me for a sec?
Yeah.
I do think that they're improved on that end, but in my mind, it's still a team that is going to be carried by their offense and just needs to be good enough or not bad on defense. And I think that's somewhere around 22, 23. The issue last year is that sure, we knew the Kings were going to be bad defense. They were 25th in offensive rating per Basketball Reference. They have to be
terrible.
a top 15. Yeah, they have to be a top 15 offense in my mind. This next season.
That to me again is the most maddening shit that has been around this team, is the fact that they had inability to score the basketball.
Yeah.
When you had the ability to run fast and have a fast-paced offense, that should change this year. And that maybe I'm getting ahead of you, Brenden. That might have been one of your questions, but they need to be like you just mentioned, a top 15 offensive team in the league this year.
I agree. Next one up for you guys. This one might be the easiest one on the list in my mind. Harrison Barnes will average the 3rd most points per game on the Sacramento Kings next season. Last year, De'Aaron Fox averaged 23.2 in first place. Sabonis was second with 18.9. And then third would be Harrison with 16.4. Herter last year with the Hawks averaged 12.1. Monk last year with the Lakers averaged 13.8. Fact or cap, Sean Cunningham, Harrison Barnes will average the 3rd most points per game next year.
I'll say cap. Yeah, I'll say cap.
Who is it?
I would like him to be, but I don't know. I think Kevin Huerter's going to have more opportunity this year. I don't think he's going to be shy about shooting the ball. And I think the emergence of Keegan Murray might prevent touches for Harrison. So, yeah, I will say – and who knows? Maybe he's not here by midseason. So, I'll say cap.
I'll say cap as well.
Wow.
Because I think that the Kings can have – I think Fox will average around 24. I think Sabonis will average around 20. But then I think they're going to have 3 guys who are right around 15 points a game. or maybe even 4. I think 4 guys around, 14, 15, 16 points a game. And Herter, Monk. I think Monk will actually be a lightning scorer off the bench. I think Keegan Murray can average 15 a game without any problems. And then I think Harrison can average 15 a game. I just think that it's gonna be difficult because those guys are all going to be taking turns on what night that they're hot and what night that they're not. And I know that that's a lot of points per game that I just described. But yeah, that's going to be your main rotation. They're going to have an opportunity. I think they'll have 6 guys, 7 guys in double figure scoring.
Who's your guess for third then?
I think it's a coin flip. But I think Herter has a great shot, and I think Keegan Murray has a great shot. And then I think Monk is going to have unlimited opportunity to score off the bench. They're going to say, go ahead and do what you're going to do. We don't care. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I definitely said I thought it was the easiest one because I thought that was going to be a fact with HB. But I absolutely see it. I think that what you guys are pointing out, like Herter getting more shots up and having more opportunity, I think that he could put up a lot better numbers than that kind of 12 that he's plateaued at a little bit in Atlanta, like you pointed out earlier, James. So I see it. I think that something Chris Watkins pointed out to me, like there is contract year Harrison Barnes. Like if the issue with HB is he's not getting shots up, is being in a contract year going to motivate him? Like that's really been the frustration with HB, right?
Yeah, but
like
it's Harrison Barnes though.
It is, but is there?
He's just not that type of personality, though.
You don't think last big paycheck?
No, he's not a guy that's going to go out and be like, "I'm going to get mine." He's coming off of 2 of his best seasons ever.
Well, it's not get mine though, right? It's just like maybe I'm semi-open and I'm going to shoot this 3 rather than only taking them when I'm wide open.
No, I think he's done enough. To be honest, I think he's done enough to earn his next contract, his final contract, final whatever impactful contract, if you will. I just don't see him scoring more, going in saying I need to score more. Like he's just not, that zebra's not changing his stripes. Like he is what he is, and he plays the role very well. And there's teams that again, I think it'll be good. He'll be impactful for a good team. For a good team to be to go out like Denver could use him in the worst way. Memphis could use him in the worst way. And if they had somebody like him, that's the type of move that they probably should make.
Yeah.
Yeah, I look at Harrison too, and the last 2 seasons he's averaged 16.1, 16.4, but the 2 seasons before that he was in the 14s per game. So I see him potentially taking a step backwards just because he knows that that's not what's going to get him paid. Like he's already been paid twice, I think even like 3 times. So you got a guy who's looking at this the right way, like I want to win, and whatever he needs to do to make that team win. If he comes in with the right attitude, if he's still on the team, and he comes in with the right attitude, then I think him taking 1 or 2 less shots per game, which sounds like abhorrent for some people. They're like, "Are you kidding me? Take less shots?" But I think he might feel like that would help because if you got guys like Herter, you've got guys like Keegan Murray that need those shots to sort of get themselves going, even Monk, then I think they would be willing to do it.
And by the way, I hope I'm not jumping the gun on one of your questions here, but the guy who I want to see take a rise in scoring is probably, see if you guys can, I've probably already told on myself before. Do you guys know who I want to see the rise in scoring come from?
Herter.
Well, no, because I expect that one. The one I want to see
Davion.
the rise in scoring.
No, Sabonis.
Thank you.
Sabonis.
That guy needs to be more selfish. He needs to be more selfish on the offensive end and get his. I want to see 20, 23 points a game from him.
Yeah. I think like easy 20 and 13 is like the potential, and it's really hard to envision a guy who puts up those numbers in the Western Conference and doesn't make the All-Star team. That's just me, especially if they're competitive, and he's a big reason why they're competitive.
Yeah.
Right.
So
and so that is what I would like to see. I don't know if we're capable of seeing that, but I would say, going back to the All-Star question, when you guys said that it was De'Aaron, see, I think it's Sabonis. I think Sabonis has the easiest shot of making the All-Star team.
he's a guy with a track record. So
And he's big. He's big. It'll be double doubles. I mean,
Right.
to be a big man in the West it's easier to make, in my opinion, the All-Star team, especially when you're as skilled as he is. Whereas coming as a guard is tougher. So neither one is getting in by votes. So who will the coaches reward? We'll see.
Yeah. And I think, interestingly, the Kings are going to have some fun highlights. I think that is going to, like, they'll make SportsCenter Instagram account like way more this year than they would have last year, in my mind. Like, I think that they're going to have more team success, obviously, and that'll be part of it. But I think that there is, this doesn't matter all too much, but I think when it comes to like no, it doesn't. But I think that like people outside of Sacramento will like pick up on it a little bit more when there are more highlight plays. And I think that the Kings have some potential of, finishing plays really explosively with some of these guys, with De'Aaron and Malik, and I think there's potential for like really good ball movement. I think that you'll see more highlights from the Kings, which again doesn't matter all too much, but I do think there is an impact that has on like the national kind of fan base outside of Sacramento.
Yeah, you need to be fun to watch. Like that's the toughest part about this team. You need to be fun to watch. You need to
watchability.
Have marketability. Yep, absolutely.
Absolutely. Last one I have for you guys, and I think that this one might drive Sean crazy because I'm asking you to look a little bit in the future here. Fact or cap, Kevin Huerter will spend the rest of his brand new 4-year, $65 million contract with the Sacramento Kings. He's 23 years old, 2.5 weeks old from turning 24. Again, just starting this 4-year, $65 million deal. Mr. Sean Cunningham, fact or cap that Kevin Huerter will finish that deal with the Kings? Yeah.
I'll say fact. I feel good about that one.
I too will say fact. I think he's going to take a huge step, and I think that there are too many options in Atlanta. I think he's going to have an opportunity to get a lot of really wide open looks and be a really solid two-way player.
Absolutely. I am going with the same. I think that kind of threw that one in for the sake of, like, I think that Kevin Huerter is kind of part of this long-term core. And maybe if he improves even more so, that he kind of cements himself even further into that. Obviously, it's not like an untouchable thing. We never know what sort of trades are going to go on or anything like that. But, yeah, I mean, I think that it's definitely encouraging. It's the best get that Monty has this offseason, unless you want to throw Keegan Murray in there as well. But that's all I got for you, fellas.
Yeah.
I like that. Fact or cap. That was fun.
Factor cap, there we go. Yeah. And on Huerter, too, I just think that there's so much potential there. Like, you're right. He fits where the team is going, for sure. And I just think he's one of those guys that has been underutilized in the past, and we're going to get to see him shine. And I would be shocked if he didn't average 16 to 18 points per game over the next 4 seasons for the Kings.
Most improved player, Kevin Huerter.
Ooh. Interesting.
Yeah, well, it sounds funny, but shoot, that could be true. That could be true.
Yeah, interesting. All right. Well, that was fun. The dog days of summer, we still put up an hour and 30 minute long pod. But good stuff, guys. Do we have any final thoughts? Brenden, we'll start with you. Final thoughts.
Should I go to this Sac Republic game on Saturday?
Do you like soccer?
I've been playing a whole lot of FIFA.
I love soccer.
A lot of FIFA.
My son is really good at FIFA.
I just got caught because I actually like FIFA. I like playing FIFA too. It's fun on the video. But I'm not a soccer guy. But that being said, I think you can have a lot of fun at a Sac Republic game. It's as much fun as you had with the River Cats and enjoying that. I think you can enjoy because you've never been, right? You've never been to a Republic match.
I was there for a concert one time, but that's the only time I've even been to the field. It was a Quinn, it's like XCI, it's like 19 something, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know what that means, any of that.
Yeah, it's okay, James. I'll show you later.
Are you familiar, Sean?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, okay.
I am. Although XCI, I was like, I think I was going to try and pull a Charlie XCX and do a little tangent on that one, but it's fine.
Yeah, because it's just Roman numerals, right? Is what's going on
Right.
here. Yeah.
I will say you should definitely check out the Republic. To me, that's a nice time to do it. It's gonna be hot. State Fair is over, right? Is that done? I can't remember.
I don't know, but it's going to be hot.
It's gonna be hot.
Yeah.
I'll
be on the lake.
I've been getting recommendations on where to sit in the shaded areas.
when they play what's coming up in September, when they're playing in Orlando for that Lamar Hunt Championship, definitely watch that. I know it's not here in Sacramento, but definitely watch that because that's some history right there.
I'm all over that.
Incredible.
Yeah. Sweet. Sean, do you have any final thoughts?
I think I'm going to go see Nope tonight. I've been putting it off far too much, and it's the Jordan Peele little horror movie there. So
either you love it or you hate it. That's what I've heard.
Really?
Yeah. Like there is no middle ground. Either you're a huge fan or you think it's horrible. So.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, we actually ended up buying on our Vudu account the last two, Us and what's the other one?
Get Out.
Oh yeah, Get Out, and then what's the other one?
Us.
Okay. Yeah.
I liked Us a lot. I think I liked Us almost. I mean, I liked Get Out too, but I think I liked Us a little bit more just because of how freaking crazy it was. I mean, Get Out's crazy too, but Us is just sadistically weird, man. It's just weird. It's just weird stuff going on.
Yeah. It's got
very creative.
Yeah,
I love the fact where you can have these creative. Like, it's so hard to be creative and have something that hasn't been done before, especially in movies and,
Yeah,
he
he seems heavily. Was it Beloved? Toni Morrison? Is that the book? He seems heavily influenced by that, like sort of the automatronic, the something else, the like replica human type world, which is interesting. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Brenden, what's the last movie you saw? Are you gonna go see one? Gotta get this in, 'cause I know people hate this.
Next movie I watch will be Godfather 2. That is still my plan for next time I watch a movie. I got way too caught up in Ozark though this last week. I think that I was only on like season 1 or 2. And I binge watched like I've rarely binge watched in my life. Ozark was phenomenal. I think there's only like 3 shows I've ever fully completed front to back, and Ozark is now one of them. But next movie will be Godfather 2.
That's crazy.
Cool.
You've only seen that many series. That's
like
wild.
I don't understand how I did this, but like Breaking Bad, obviously phenomenal.
Yeah.
But I think the only thing I haven't seen is the last like 6 episodes or something. Which I don't know how I stopped at that point. But I think it was just like something that was happening in life in general, and then I fell off of it. And to me, once it's been long enough, like I really want to go watch Stranger Things. Oh. Well, I have seen a little bit of Better Call Saul. I think I've seen like the first season. I really want to go rewatch Stranger Things or watch the new season, but I feel like it's been so long that I have to rewatch the previous stuff to catch all the way back up, and that's just a whole process.
Yeah,
I think that would be fun because I haven't seen Stranger Things, so I'm going to start it.
You need to watch that, and then the other one, Sean, I know you would love is Blackbird. It's on Apple. It's what is this? Taron, who's it?
Oh, now we'll be in suspense forever.
Yeah, he's not allowed to talk about Blackbird. He should know better.
He's either going to say Taron Killam from SNL, who I love. He used to be on SNL. Nope, go ahead. James is back.
Yeah. Blackbird,
is it Taron
right?
Killam? I don't know. I haven't.
Oh, okay, so Blackbird. Who's the dude from the Kingsman?
Oh, Edgerton.
Yeah. Oh, it's absolutely like enthralling. Yeah. So I've been watching. The final comes out. I think it's only a 6-part series, and the final one comes out on Friday. So you guys should binge watch that. It's good stuff.
Taron Egerton is the one that did Rocket Man.
Yeah. He's good.
Stuff. Rocket Man's Elton John, Brenden. So
Elton John is a singer from the 1970s, 80s, 90s.
If you see Almost Famous, you'll hear his hit "Tiny Dancer," and it's fantastic.
As well as familiar.
as well as Mona Lisa's and Mad Hatter's, which is a phenomenal song that most people. It's a deep cut. Most people don't know that one.
Did you see him in concert?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I took my grandmother. Man, that was a lot of fun. He's
Oh,
actually
amazing.
so we were approaching Levi's Stadium and on Tuesday, and they have a big banner. Elton John's going to be there, and I was like, damn, that would be. I don't know that I
It's a
could see him in a stadium
pricey
though, but it's
ticket.
like yeah, man, it's expensive.
And then after watching him, like, I know this sounds ridiculous, but every time I think of him driving his piano like up and down the aisles at the grocery store. You know, like one of
Like the commercial.
Well,
Didn't he
I
have one of
just
those
like
commercials?
you see him. He's on his piano. All of a sudden, his piano starts moving all the way across stage. But it's almost like if you saw him, it's his version of a Lark motor scooter, like or one of the baskets, the driving baskets at the grocery store. I just see him like everywhere he goes, he's driving a piano and like grabbing stuff off the shelf and just putting it on the piano. That I don't know why it makes me think that, but just the way that he moved on stage, just it was funny. And I was like, hey, look at that. He looks like a little strange character on a Lark motor scooter.
Is
So-
Elton John the banner in Golden One? No, huh?
Jesus
Who is
Christ,
it?
man, that's
No, I
Paul
just forget who it is. I
Paul
know who Paul
McCartney.
McCartney is. I just forgot who it was up there.
We were both at that concert too.
We
Yeah.
were sitting very, very kind of a section from apart from each other. We were
Yeah,
just, like,
we
rows
could
from
wave at each other. Yeah.
I put my feet up on the rail. It was great.
I dropped my phone. Like the
you
player
did.
entrance, I dropped my phone and the security guards, it for somehow it didn't break and they threw it
You do
back up
this
to
a
me.
lot. You do this a lot.
Yeah, wild. Awesome.
Final
All right,
thoughts,
well,
James?
final thoughts. Like I don't know if I would go to a Rivercats game. It's too hot. Stay cool, people. I need to call and get solar on my house because my electrical bill, because we're all locked in the house now because we all work from home for the most part. Stay cool this weekend. It's going to be another scorcher, and I mean my watch right now says it's 99 where I'm at, which means it's 105 in Sacramento. That's brutal. So that's a good way of me saying I'll be on a boat. Sorry.
One of the two, yeah.
A-holes. One of my two. Well, you guys are both welcome to come up and we can boat and barbecue on Sunday.
The Ham Estate.
That's right. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the King's Beat podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I don't know, again, how we're running this thing an hour and 40 minutes. If you don't want to listen to us talk about movies and television shows, then that's okay. You can just stop. Like 10 minutes ago, you can go back and stop there. But it's too late now. Again, we'll be back next week. We'll probably start bringing in some guests. If you're still watching, give us a thumbs up.
still
Anywhere,
watching.
subscribe. If you're listening on Apple or anywhere else, give us a rating and a review. Those things help us. But thanks for tuning in to the King's Beat podcast. So for Fox 40's Sean Cunningham and the King's Pulse podcast, Brenden Nunes.
Did you see him close his eyes? That was the best part.
That's right.
If you can see this on YouTube, I highly recommend.
I am James Ham, your Kings insider for ESPN 1320 and the King's Beat. See you next week.